Hi, welcome to Accessing HPC Clusters. In this lesson, I'm going to go over how to access HPC clusters using the SSH protocol, demonstrating it on Mac and Windows. I'll talk a little bit about third-party applications that can also connect to an HPC cluster, and then afterwards I'll talk about how to transfer files from a client machine to an HPC cluster using a command line interface and an SFTP program. I'll begin by demoing macOS. This will be pretty similar to how you access an HPC cluster from Linux as well. Both OSs typically have an SSH client built in by default. You'll use whatever terminal program you want, either the built-in terminal that comes with the OS or a third-party terminal such as iTerm2 on Mac to run the SSH commands. And now we'll do a brief demo of how this all actually works. I'm using macOS's built-in terminal program. This is accessible if you go to Applications, Utilities. This is accessible if you go to Applications, the SSH command, Utilities, SSH. And then you put in your SSH command, in our case SSH, class 37. And then you put in your username, in our case the name of the login. 37. In this case, it's the name of the login.alaska.edu. In this case, it's Chinook4.alaska.edu. That's the login node. After which you'll be prompted for your password. You'll see that you're on the system. After you type that in, you'll see that you're on the system. Next, we'll talk about Windows. On Windows, you can access SSH via third-party programs. On Windows, you can access SSH or nowadays in modern versions of Windows like Windows 10, or nowadays in modern versions of Windows like Windows 10, Windows 11. You can actually that version will look very similar to how macOS's terminal. That version will look very similar to how macOS's terminal. But I will show how to use it on PuTTY. So I won't demonstrate that. But I will show how to use it on PuTTY. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to use PuTTY to SSH. I'll also show you how to save a session. I'll also show you how to save a session, as well as setting a couple of options that are typically set. As well as setting a couple of options that are typically set. The first is just your username, so you're not prompted for it all the time. And the second is enabling what's called XL11 forwarding, and the second is enabling what's called XL11 output from a remote server onto your machine. Output from a remote server. You do need to install an X server on your client machine. You do need to install an X server on your client machine, like on your laptop, typically used on Windows, such as Xming. I'm just showing the PuTTY typically used on Windows. So to start off with, we're going to put our host name of our login node. Next, I'm going to name the session. In this case, Chinook04. Next, I'm going to name the session. We're going to go to connection and then data. Next, we're going to go to connection and then data. And here we can type our username and the auto login username. In this case, it's going to be afterwards, we're going to expand the SSH options. Afterwards, we're going to click on the SSH options and just click this enable X11 and just click this. Finally, go back to session, hit save. Finally, go back to session, hit save, click open. That means you'll be prompted for your session there. Another window will come up. And you'll be prompted for your password. Another window will come up. You'll be able to enter your password, and you'll be able to get onto the system. And that's how you use PuTTY to SSH into an HPC. I'll talk a little bit about third-party programs. This is kind of. I'll talk a little bit about third-party programs. A new push to make kind of using. HPC resources a little bit easier than kind of having to know a little bit of Linux. Resources a little bit easier than kind of having to know a little bit of Linux, being able to SSH into a command line and figure out how to one example that a lot of HPC centers are using now is Open. One example that a lot of HPC web application that you log into, and it will connect you to the cluster with some templates. And it will connect you to the cluster with some templates. Terminal in your web browser, so you don't have to terminal in your web browser, so you don't have to macOS's based terminal use like prompt in Windows. It can even launch certain applications on compute nodes. It can even launch certain applications for you compute nodes and submit it to the job scheduler for you, run and let you know when you MATLAB and like Jupyter Notebooks are a couple other examples. MATLAB and like Jupyter Notebooks are a couple other examples. Resources you can access compute of an HPC cluster through them if they're set up correctly. Of an HPC cluster through them if they're set up correctly. Or certain programs will allow you to network store your SSH. Or certain programs will allow you to like store your SSH in it, and then it will SSH into your cluster. In it, and then it will SSH some settings into your cluster. Through the application settings, and it will submit jobs through the application for you. I want to talk a little bit about file transfers now as well. I want to talk a little bit about file transfers data from your client machine, from some storage to the HPC client machine, from some storage to the HPC primary ways of doing this. or either through kind of two primary ways of doing this, or either through terminal command line interface, using stuff like SCP terminal or rsync, or you use a third-party program like an SFTP client, or you use a third-party program like an SFTP. I'm gonna have some examples, primarily focusing on the command line interface, primarily focusing on the command line interface, and using the FileZilla SFTP. Let's start off with the command line interface examples. Let's start off with the two terminals open. The top one is on my local machine. The top one, and the bottom one is on my local login node of Chinook, and the bottom one is on the login node of Chinook local documents directory. I'm in my doing local documents directory file, and if I do an ls-l directories file, and if I look at everything, you'll see that there's no directories. Files. If I look at everything, you'll see that there's in Chinook 04. On Chinook 04, I'm in this demo directory, and you'll see that I'm in this demo directory. And the easiest way to copy files is using the SCP command. The file that you want, and you just do SCP, and then you enter basically the exact same thing in it, and then you enter basically the exact same thing in it, username at the login node, and then you username in the path of login node, actually want, and then you have to put in the path of where you actually want this file to put in your password, and then it should you'll put in your password copied over, and then it should on say that copied over, and the file is there. On you can do the same thing. The file is there. Directories as well, but you have to pass with -r. Directories as well, but you have to pass it the. If you don't, you'll get an error. And just as an example, if you don't, you'll get an error. Try that. And just you'll see that as an error here. If I try that, you'll see that I'll get an error here, and it won't copy over. Get a not a regular file, failed to upload. Get a not a regular file, failed to upload. SCP-R. To fix it, you just do in this -r SCP-R. Copy it over, and then you'll see after I type in my password, and then you'll see I've copied two files over, and if I look over here, copied two files over, and if I look over folder, you'll see those files exist. And if I look in my folder, the other command that is often used to copy files over the network is the rsync command, and this has a bit more options than just your SCP. And this has it's used a little bit more options than just your SCP, but it can keep used a little bit directories in sync each time you run it. But it can keep you have like directories in source directory to run it. So if you have like a source destination directory, it will copy files destination directory that's missing, and only the ones that are missing. Files over that copy everything. Only the ones that are missing, and it can do like incremental everything over. Press and it can do the incremental transfer, so press faster. The data during transfer, so it's a little bit faster. One of the standard ways of doing this is one of the standard ways of doing this is RAVZ flags, and then you pass it recursive. That means it'll copy a directory over. Recursive, that means it'll archive directory over. Like the timestamps and the metadata. It will keep the timestamps and the metadata during this copy. Verbose just during this copy. And Z compresses the files what it's doing. And Z compresses the files example. So in this one, we'll do this rsync example, and then we'll copy it over to directory, and then we'll copy it over to Chinook 04 class.alaska.edu. And just like with SCP, it'll ask me what my password is. Just like with SCP, it'll ask me what my password is. I'll type file list just and you'll see that it copies copy over. Builds a file list just to know what it has to try to copy over, and we'll copy it all over. And if I do an ls-l, you'll see that it's there. And if I do an rs ls-l rsync example, if I do an rs ls-l rsync example, now we'll move on to the FileZilla. So this is FileZilla. This is just an example of a graphical. This is FileZilla. This is just an example. A lot of people like these for transferring files just because a lot of people like these for transferring files kind of already using this sort of your OS GUI is kind of already using this might be a little bit more comfortable GUI. There's a lot of these out there. FileZilla is just free. There's a lot of these out there. Just make sure that you get FileZilla is just free, and just make sure that you get it from FileZilla-project, and that makes sure that you get the actual official. That's the official site, and that makes sure that you get the actual official download. So the first thing you do when you get see this screen is you'll have your local site, see the local machine on the left, and your local site, your local machine on the left, and your remote site on the right. That'll be your directory. So the first thing you need to do then is actually connect. So the first thing you need to do then is actually connect. It's going to be Schnucko4.alaska.edu. So in this point, it's going to be Schnucko4.alaska.edu. Your password, and then you type in your username. You're going to be accessing this over, and then you're going to be accessing this over, which is 22. Port, so you want to put that which is 22. And the quickest way to actually connect after that is to hit this. The quickest way to actually connect after that is to hit this. And then on the right, you'll see that it populated this. And then on the right, you'll see that it populated this. Class 37. Double click on demo here. Class 37. And we'll see the files that I created in. And we'll see the files that I created in the command line copy files over. I can take like my. If I just wanted to copy files over, drag and drop. And it moves right on over. Drop, and you can see that file 3 and 4. It moves right on over. And you can see that file 3 and then you can copy files back in the same way. So I'm going to take my rsync and then you can copy files back in the same way. So I'm going to take my rsync example, and it will be there. Copy over. So pretty quick and easy to use. If you prefer the graphical interface, and easy to use. This is if you prefer the graphical interface, this is the sort of thing that you might want to look into. And that wraps up this lesson on how to access and copy files to an HPC cluster. Thank you.